everyone. I'm Nan-Hie, and your host, a freelance journalist. Before I want to start, I wanted to expand on some of the backgrounds of these startups that we have here tonight. To give you an indication of the momentum that is building around AR-powered AI vehicles. For example, with Vitaly from WayRay, the Russian-Swiss developer of holographic AR technology for connected cars, just recently secured 18 million of investment from Alibaba, making its total investment value at 28 million. The five-year-old company's AR-enabled vehicles will hit the streets next year in Shanghai. And then with Mobvoi's Zhifei, we have AI-powered wearables, including a voice recognition and language technology-based devices. There's a recent push towards these innovations in AI-powered vehicles. That includes rear-view mirror that provides navigation, infotainment, social media, and so forth. Volkswagen recently claimed that it invested $180 million at the Beijing-based startup, and the company is also backed by Google, Sequoia Capital, and so forth. So I'm going to start by busting some misconceptions around the potential impact of these innovations. There's been so much written about the future, the hope, the perils of this technology. Let's see if they're true or not. And so I'm going to ask our speakers to say if these statements that I'm going to say are true or is it just hype. First off, car ownership, even car sharing services as we know it will be a thing of the past. Truth or hype?
Yeah, let me answer this question. First of all, let's take a look at what is the car sharing currently. The car sharing is like when you have your own car, you can share it with someone else. And in the future, self-driving cars would be like transportation as a service companies, will be led by transportation as a service companies like Uber, Didi, or others. So that means that we will just have a taxi-like car sharing without drivers. And that means that, in my point of view, there will not be like traditional car sharing companies because you either have your own car and drive it like in autonomous mode, or you're just ordering a taxi-like transportation as a service. Yes, that's my point of view.
Okay. Yeah. And just to talk about the future of what the functionalities of these autonomous cars could do. And as we all know, I'm sure some of you know there's 5 levels of a self-driving function. The highest level, fully autonomous car is the 5th level. Is it possible in future that we can program our autonomous vehicles to go to our desired location and we could nap throughout the whole journey and let the machine do its job? Is this truth or is this just hype?
Yeah, I'm sorry, please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on how far we're talking about, right? So I think ultimately that will definitely be true. Because for autonomous driving, if you think about all those technology like computer vision, scheduling, traffic control, and all those things, and even for the communication between different cars, and the communication between car and the infrastructure. So if we have all those technology ready, we can do automatic computer vision and road object recognition, and then we also have communication with the infrastructure and the car with car, right? So then we can do just you say a command, then the car will deliver you to the destination, right? Yeah. But I mean, I think in the long run that will definitely happen if we have all those algorithms and infrastructure set up. But in the short term, who knows, right?
In the short term. But in the long run, we're talking how many years before you think this could be a true reality of having 5th level autonomous cars?
I think like after 10 years, that will happen. Yeah.
That's not too far away.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so we're going to talk about the drawbacks of this technology. Millions of jobs of conventional auto transport industry will become extinct. We're talking about truck drivers, taxi drivers, mechanics, and all the other sub-industries around this ecosystem of labor. these frightening numbers have been reported a lot in recent years about the potential job losses and the societal impact of this innovation. For example, there's a figure that by 2025, 200 million jobs worldwide will be lost in the age of autonomous vehicles when it becomes a dominant reality. Is this true, or is this just hyped up fears?
I hope that this is true.
You hope that this is true?
Yeah.
I hope there's no taxi drivers or any car sharing service people here, but yeah, why do you say that?
I'm saying this because I do believe that robots and AI algorithms are much better drivers than human beings. So that would be much safer, and like we'll not lose lives of people. So I definitely believe that this is true, and I'm actually participating in this process because people maybe are scared of machines, scared of decision made by machines. But personally, I believe that this is what we should do, and I would ask politicians not to stop this process, not to halt it because they want to get some votes, not to lose the population that will vote for them, because these people will lose their jobs. Because I do like the principle which is called eat people. Like in general, if you make like short-term, not very popular decisions, which will like lead to the job losses, but in the future, like in 10 years period, in 10 years timeline or more, it'll have a very big economical and social impact, because those people who will lose their jobs, they will think about what to do next, and they will try to find, like it was in the United States in the mid-50s when a lot of cowboys lost their jobs because of the automation of the farming, and they became entrepreneurs. Some of them like they really changed the economy in like within 10 or 15 years, and that could happen in the automotive industry as well.
And what about you, Zhifei?
I also believe that will certainly happen. So whenever you have a new technology, you will there always old jobs will disappear, but new jobs will appear, right? Especially for the autonomous driving, it's because it's more kind of like infrastructure-based project, right? Mm-hmm. So all the big cities and country will operate a huge network with so many cars, and everything has to be automated, and it has to be safe, right? So I believe that many new service or new jobs will also be created, because if we want to make the infrastructure really work, then we still need to do a lot of new things.
Okay. And another statement in future, with the age of autonomous vehicles, there's a big argument on whether roads will be truly less congested, but also safer. What are your views, truth or fact, that roads will be much more safer and less congested?
Yeah, absolutely true. I think that companies like Lee's, they're working on they're working on the algorithms for like AI-based algorithms are working specifically to make this happen. And there are this is not a very rocket science now to develop these kind of technologies. I mean, the main challenge here is how to make them working like in 100% of all like possible situations. Mm-hmm. So this is the main focus and the main challenge. But like nowadays, I was driving the autonomous car like several times, because we have like customers from the automotive industry who already have their fully autonomous, like level 4 autonomous vehicles, and you don't think that they are like going to kill you because they're very smart. They have a lot of sensors, and of course they have a lot of predictive algorithms that are now testing. And the industry, the automotive industry, is traditionally very conservative, so and mainly focus on the safety. So I think that this is achievable, this is doable, like within several years for sure.
Yeah, so in general, I think this is also going to be true, but if we really think about the process, it might be at the very beginning. If autonomous driving really becomes a reality, it will create a lot of problems and chaos, right? But then we can iterate. So we can gradually solve all those problems, and the world, the road will be safer and safer, right? But on the other hand, they might also, because this is really a new thing, right? There might be some other phenomena will happen, right? And especially if the system is not stable enough, then suddenly a small bug in the computer program might create a huge problem. So those things will possibly be happen.
Okay, and the safety question also leads me up to the next question about the ethical dilemmas that this technology in future will pose, and that the society around the world cannot get over. We have to have guidelines, rules, regulations. The community has to get together in order to rectify this ethical dilemmas. The most common one that's been referenced is the potential collisions that would arise when you have self-driving cars. You are going on the road, the vehicle is going on the road, and there's a potential pedestrian. The machine has to decide who to protect, the pedestrian or the passenger in the vehicle. This hasn't been figured out. Who's the fate that should be protected? What are we going to do about this? And can we overcome these ethical dilemmas?
Yeah. Can
you elaborate?
Yeah, I think that first of all, these are fake ethical dilemmas, and these are
they're hype.
Yeah, this is totally hype, like led by journalists and social media. Yeah, I do believe this because, if you really understand how these cars work, like how autonomous cars work, and you do realize that the computer vision and lidars and radars have a vision of up to 300 meters, much further than the real human eye can see. So you can understand, and they have a really nice predictive algorithms, and they are connected to the infrastructure. So there actually might not be any pedestrians on the highway that is enabled for self-driving cars. So I think this is a totally hype, and these autonomous vehicles, they'll predict the potential collision much faster than the human. So I believe that this is a fake dilemma. I don't believe in this.
By not believing, you saying these are going to unlikely occurrence.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. That's true.
I hear people laughing in the audience.
Yeah.
Okay, next. Zhifei?
Yeah, I also believe so because so usually computer algorithm is really able to do a very good job when you have different conditions, right? But for human, you may only see one example of those accidents. So you're not trained to react in different way in different conditions, right? But a computer, one accident will be learned by all the computer in the world, right? But for human, when you have one accident, only you know. Most of the others really don't know, right? So I think in general, if the algorithm is mature enough, but that's one big assumption, right? Then computer should be able to do a much better job because it has seen so many training examples. It has less variance.
It has less variance.
Right. Human has a lot of variance, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to add to the point about variance. I know that in California, the streets are so much more predictable and safer and larger. Whereas testing these autonomous vehicles in China have anybody been on the streets of Beijing or Shanghai? It's not exactly predictable. It's incredibly dynamic. There's a lot of variance testing these vehicles and their safety and functionalities in China versus, say, Silicon Valley, California. I'm not sure. I'm very confident. That means that these cars will be so much more refined and accurate in detecting various scenarios on the road, but are you?
You mean when the autonomous driving will happen, will there be those in China or in the US?
You have to build a technology that predicts every scenario,
right.
Especially in more dynamic streets like China.
Right. I think if you can do a good job with on autonomous driving in China traffic condition, then you can do autonomous driving everywhere in the world, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's true. If you can build an autonomous car in the busy, chaotic streets of China, it's universally applicable.
Absolutely.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And though I'm also going to talk about voice recognition technology. Sorry, guys. My question is actually on the sheet that just landed on the floor. I'm going to ask Zhifei, do we think voice interaction will be the main mode of input communications in the car?
Because I'm doing the voice interaction, I have to say yes, right? So, but in general, I do believe that's true. Because voice interaction becomes much more mature than before. And especially for our company, we have done voice interaction for different platforms, like a mobile phone, smartwatch, and also the automotive world, right? So we realized that the voice interaction in the car environment is really useful, and a lot of the retention rate is much better than on mobile phone and on smartwatch, right? So that's one thing, which means there's a demand. It's just so inconvenient to use your mobile phone in the car. I think even you have autonomous driving still, because the car is not stable. It's very difficult to use your mobile phone to do the interaction, right? So in general, because the technology is mature, the user demand is very true in the car environment. So we think the voice interaction will be one of the major interaction methods. But will it be the only method? I don't think that's going to be true. So in the future, the human-computer interaction will be a combination of many interaction methods, including speech, gesture, and even eye, right? I mean, that's how humans communicate between each other, right?
Can you expand on the eye communication? I'm just kind of curious.
No,
Does that mean that you look and your
Linking.
retina scanned and
No.
communicated, or what were we talking about?
So what I'm trying to say, because human-computer interaction is really a very combined scenario, right? So what I'm trying to say, when you do voice recognition or when the computer decides what the real command is, it can also look at the eye of the driver, right? Or sometimes when you're tired, if the computer is able to detect that you're really, really tired and you're saying something that doesn't make any sense to the computer, maybe the computer should do something instead of blindly follow your instruction, right?
Oh, I see. Interesting.
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
I can add here because I agree. We were testing the car in Shanghai with that would be on the roads starting from the next year in Chinese roads, and they have the voice input. It's really amazing because like you're like in the future, and I think that in the future cars will be more oriented to the interior and what's going on inside of the car, like rather than you won't care about how beautiful your car is from the outside, or how powerful is your engine, and what about the history of the brand. You'll care about what is inside, what kind of infotainment do you have in the car, and what kind of input meters you have, what kind of infotainment, like in terms of the AR, what kind of quality of the materials you have in the car. So that is like becoming more around the passengers, because you are sitting inside, you're not focusing on the road, and you have more time to look around.
Okay. Next question is on the race to build fully autonomous cars. Which market do you think is going to achieve this breakthrough first? Is it going to be the US or China? This is the most talked about thing. Who's going to release the fully autonomous level 5 cars, self-driving cars?
I will say it might be China, because I mean, so for the autonomous driving, there are a few things you need to have, right? One is really the technology. I think China right now have quite a few startups are doing autonomous driving. They are really, really good at computer vision algorithm, right? So also the VC industry has thrown a huge amount of money in all those startups. So that's one thing, because we have talent, we have startups actually working on the autonomous driving. Secondly, so in China there are so many big cities. The traffic is so bad, right? I think the government really see a need for autonomous driving. While in the US, most of the place driving is not that problem. At least you don't feel so tired waiting for all those traffic lights, right? So that's also one thing. And Also, when you do autonomous driving, for the training, you need a lot of data. I think in China, I would say collecting data and using those data is a little bit more flexible than the rest of the other countries, right? So combine all those. The last one is really the traffic condition, right? So as we said before, if you really want the autonomous driving algorithm to be really reliable, you need to see a lot of different cases, all those very complicated cases, and they need to be happened very frequently in your data, right? So I think those variants of data is also easy to connect it in China. It's easy to be tested, right? So combine all those things, I think China really has a good chance to be more successful.
And final remarks, because we're just running out of time. I just want to ask both speakers, what would you envision in 10 years the autonomous vehicle experience would be for the user?
For the user, first of all, I would like to say that the industry will change dramatically. And on top of that food chain, there will be companies like of transportation of the service, as a service, companies like Uber and Didi. They'll get the most amount of revenues. And the second level will be switched to tier one suppliers like us and companies like technological companies that will provide technologies to OEMs, to car manufacturers. That would be like on the third level. So they will be just the hardware manufacturers. And that is how the automotive industry is changing now. So what that would mean for the drivers, for the passengers in the autonomous cars, they won't see big difference. Like if they're now using their like services like Uber or Didi, it will be like this, but you just won't have another person in your car. That's it.
Zhifei?
I think if the autonomous driving do come in the world in the future, for us, I think a car is going to become the third dimension of space for you compared with your home and your working space, right? So then car will become a platform for innovation, not just a tool. Just like when we build up the internet, then you basically mirror the physical world into the virtual world. So now I think once the autonomous driving becomes a reality, then I think the car space will also become such a huge platform for the innovation.
That's it. Everyone, thank you for attending our speakers, Vitaly and Zhifei. Thank you very much. I'm Nan-Hie and your host, freelance journalist. Thank you.
Thank you.